guys, and today I'll be explaining to you and solving a few problems on the average rate of change of a polynomial. And now let's get into it. First, I'm going to explain what this is and the process and why you're doing what you're doing. So, you see these two in brackets here? These are the things that we will be substituting in for x. We're going to substitute these in for x because we need to do that in order to figure out x and find out what is the average rate of change. But so that you get it more, I will explain what exactly the average rate of change is. So let's say f of x right here, that's equal to y, another variable. And so these two are equal. These two, f of x and y, are equal. And so maybe you're going to and if you don't know what I mean by f of x, that is just f times x. So, and f is what we are trying to find the average rate of change of. And in your problems, you are going to find something like this, like calculate the average rate of change in f over the interval blah blah blah, in this case 1, 2, and you're multiplying it by x. And f is an unknown variable, and f times x is equal to y. So now I've told you that, and now we're going to substitute these. So the average rate of change is the change in y over the change in x. And x meaning right here, see? X is this, and since we are substituting these two into x, so this becomes x. And I'll show you what I mean right now. So 1, if we substitute 1 with x, x with 1, we get 1 plus x is equal to 1, so 1 plus 1 plus 1, that is 3. And f of x is equal to 3, so y is equal to 3. And if we substitute x with 2, we get 1 plus 2 plus 1, which is 4. So that means y is equal to 4. And we have a positive 1 change, or like adding 1. We are adding 1 to 3 to 3 to get 4. And why don't we say it's a negative 1 change, because 4 minus 1 is 3. Well, you always take the value that when this first number is substituted into x, you take that value and then this value, and then depending on whether it's less than or greater than the thing you get from substituting the first thing, you can do your equation. So the change in y over the change in x. So 3 plus 1 is 4. We have a change of 1. That is our change in y, our change in f times x, our change in y. So we can substitute this with 1. And then what's our change in x? Well, since x is being substituted with these two, that means we have to look at these two to see what the change in x is. We have a positive 1 change because 1 plus 1 is 2. And you're asking, why not we just do 2 minus 1? And that would just say, okay, this is a -1 change instead. But it's the same thing here. We do the first number and then the second number, and then we compare it. So we have a +1 change, and 1 over 1 is obviously equal to 1. And 1 is our average rate of change. And we are done, and now let's look at some example problems. So now we're going to get into a little bit harder problems, and as you can see, we have these numbers in brackets, and we have our equation right here. And the question is, calculate the average rate of change in f over the interval 8, 16. And if you got what I was doing when I explained what the average rate of change is, you can do this on your own probably, and I encourage you to pause the video and do it right now. Okay, I'm assuming you've paused the video and you've done it. So now to check your answers, I will do it. So first we'll substitute x with 8, and that's going to be f of x is equal to 8. Sorry, this is not x, this is 8. So f of 8 is equal to 8 plus 4 minus 1/8 times 8. So we can simplify, and that is f of 8 is equal to 12, because 8 plus 4 is 12, and 1/8 of 8. So 8 divided by 8 is 1, so minus 1, and then we get 11. So this is equal to 11. And now we can do x is equal to 16. So if we do f of 16 is equal to 16, because x is equal to 16, and then plus 4, and then minus 1/8 of 16. So 1/8 is just divided by 8. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. So that is minus 2. Then we can simplify. 16 plus 4 is 20, minus 2 is 18. And we have a +7 change here, because 11 plus 7 is 18. And again, we have to do it according to the way these two are ordered. And now we have our change in y. So change in y, change in y. And then we have 16. So then we have our change in x. So our change in x is 8 plus 8 is 16. So our change in x is 8. Just to show you, 16 minus 8 is 8. So our average rate of change in f over the interval 8, 16 is 7/8. Now let's get into the second problem. Calculate the average rate of change in g over the interval -2, 1. And here's the equation. G of x equals 9 minus x plus x squared minus 4. And now let's apply -2 to that equation. So g of x is equal to 9 minus -2. And when you're doing minus a negative number, what you're going to do is, the negative signs cancel out, so that makes +2. So we're going to do +2 And then we're going to do plus negative 2 squared. So negative 2 squared is 4, because when you multiply a negative number by another negative number, the negative signs cancel out. So then you have plus 4. And then you have minus 4. So these two cancel out. You don't even need to care about them. And now we have 9 plus 11. 9 plus 2, which is 11. So g of x, or we can say this is y. So y is equal to 11 in this situation. Now let's substitute x with 1. So g of x is equal to 9 minus 1, because x is equal to 1. And then we have plus x squared is 1 times 1, which is equal to 1. And then we have minus 4. So minus 1 and plus 1 cancel out, and then you have 9 minus 4. Because if you add 1 to something and then take away 1 to something, you'll just have that something. So 9 minus 4 is 5, so y is equal to 5 in this. So now we have a negative 6 change, because we have to go in the order that is stated in the brackets. So 11 plus negative 6, or that is just the same thing as 11 minus 6. You could view it either way. So 11 plus negative 6 is 5. So our change in y is equal to negative 6. And in this case, this negative sign just goes right there. So that negative sign just makes it a negative fraction. So now we have to calculate the change in x, and the change in x is the difference between these two. So we have a positive 3 change, and because negative 2 plus 3 is 1, or 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So our change in x is 3. So we have 6 over 3, and we all know that is equal to 2. So you might notice that these problems are different. Look at this. Fill in the circles next to the intervals where the average rate of change of n is positive. That sounds confusing, right? Well, I'll just simplify it down for you. So in order for an average rate of change to be positive, well, this at the higher endpoint, this number has to be, like, the value of the function at this endpoint has to be bigger than the value of the function at the smaller endpoint. And if you don't get it still, if I say 4 and then I solve this equation, let's say it equals 2, and I solve it at the lower endpoint, which is 3, and I solve it, and it's like it is 4. That's not a positive average rate of change, because the value of the function here, 4, is greater than 2, and the value of the function at the lower endpoint is greater than this. So that would actually be a negative average rate of change. So that's what we have to look for, and there is like an explanation for it. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want this video to be really complicated. So I'm just going to start doing it. So we can just look at these and say, okay, 3. When x is equal to 3, 4 plus 3 squared is 3 times 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So 4 plus 9 is 4 plus 9, 13. And then 13 minus 18 is, well, I'll just let you think about that. And that's negative 5. So 13 minus 18 is negative 5. So at this endpoint, the value of the function is negative 5. And the value of the function at 4 is 4 plus x squared and x squared. So 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 plus 4 is 20, minus 18 is 2. That is a definite positive average rate of change because the function at this endpoint is higher than the function at this endpoint. So we can fill in the circle. And then, so we have the next one, 2 and 6. 4 plus, and first we're going to do 2 substituted into x. So 4 plus 2 squared. 2 squared is 4, so 4 plus 4 is 8. Minus 18 is negative 10. And you can probably already see where this is going, but I'm just going to explain it. And then, so when we substitute x with 6, 4 plus x squared, well, 6 times 6 is 36. So 4 plus 36 is 40. And then minus 18 is 22. That is definitely in positive average rate of change because the value of the function when x is equal to 6 is higher than the value of the function when x is equal to 2. So we can shade that in. And now we have negative 4 and 1. So negative 4 is 4 plus x squared. So when you're multiplying a negative number by another negative number, the negative signs cancel out and you're left with a positive sign. So negative 4 times negative 4, the negatives cancel out, and then 4 times 4 is 16. So it would be the same value as 4 over here. So we already know that is going to be 2. And just to show you the logic behind that, 4 plus x squared, and x squared is negative 4 times negative 4, and that is equal to 16. So 4 plus 16 is 20. And then you take away 18, you get, oh no, it's not negative 2. I accidentally wrote negative 2. So it's 2. And so that to show you, those two are the exact same value. And then we have 1 and 4 plus x squared. So 1 times 1 is 1. So 4 plus 1 is 5. Minus 18 is negative 13. And that is not a positive average rate of change. Because look at this. I mean, 2 is obviously greater than negative 13. And the 2 is coming from this endpoint, not this endpoint like we want it to. So this is a negative average rate of change, and we can cross this one out. And then we have 0 and 2. And then we already have 2 right here. And then 2 is going to be equal to negative 10. So negative 10. And 0 is going to be equal to 4 plus 0 times 0 is 0, obviously. And then 4 plus 0 is 4. Minus 18 is negative 14. So this is a positive average rate of change because this number at this endpoint is bigger than the number at this endpoint. So we can shade this in. And finally, negative 6 and 7. So negative 6, 4 plus x squared, and x squared is equal to negative 6 times negative 6. I know I'm kind of going through this really fast, but hopefully you can get what I'm saying. So negative 6 times negative 6 is 36 because the negative signs cancel out, and 6 times 6 is 36. And then minus 18 is 18. And then finally you have 7, and 4 plus 7 squared is 49, 4 plus that is 53, and then you take away 18 and do the math, you have 35. 35 is obviously bigger than 18, so we can shade this in. And we are done. 4 out of the 5 are positive, and wow, that's more than I thought it would be. And now let's move on to the last problem. Now we have this last problem that we're going to do, and then we're done. So as you can see, the question says, fill in the circles next to the intervals where the average rate of change of P is right there, the average rate of change of P is negative or 0. So when you think or 0, what does that mean? Well, 0 is just where both values at the endpoints are the exact same. So now let's do it. So our first value, negative 4. Negative 4, if you put it into here, that is 14 plus x. Well, that's plus negative 4, which is the same thing as 14 minus 4, because plus and negative signs cancel out. You're left with just a negative sign. So 14 minus 4 is 10, plus 3 is 13, minus x to the third. So x to the third is just negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. So negative 4 times negative 4, that's 16, because the negative signs cancel out. And then 16 times 4, negative 4, that is going to be, do the math, you get negative 64. And then so that's 13 minus negative 64, and as always, the negative signs with negative 64 and this, they cancel out, and you are left with plus 64. So that's 13 plus 64. And do the math, you get 77. So at this end, you have 77. And just keep in mind, just because I'm doing this mentally doesn't mean you have to. So you can also do it on paper. Just follow what I'm saying, pause the video, write down, pause the video, write down. You can do that. And on to the next endpoint. So negative 3. So 14 minus 3, because plus x, the negative and positive sign cancel out, you get, and only the negative sign is left. So 14 minus 3 is 11, plus 3 is 14, and 14 minus x to the third, or negative 3 to the third power, and negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is going to be equal to x to the third power. So negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, and then that 9 times negative 3 again is going to be equal to negative 27. And when you replace negative 7 with this, negative 27 with this, the two minus signs, they cancel out, so you're left with plus 27, and 14 plus 27 is going to be equal to 41. And that is definitely a negative average rate of change, so we can fill that in. Now we have the second option. So negative 6, when you input it instead of x, you get 14 plus negative 6, which is equal to minus 6, and 14 minus 6 is 8, plus 3 is 11, minus x to the third. So that's negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6. And when you do the math, you might want to do a calculator or do it on paper. You're going to get 216, negative 216. But since there is a negative sign right here, the two negative signs with negative 216 and that cancel out, and you are left with 11 plus 216, and that is 227. Mile, that's big number. And then you have negative 1, and 14 plus negative 1 is equal to 13, plus 3 is 16, minus x to the third, which is minus negative 1, because negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, and then negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. So minus negative 1, which is equal to plus 1, and that is 16 plus negative 1, minus negative 1, which is plus 1. So 16 plus 1 is 17. That is a negative average rate of change. And now I think we're seeing a pattern here. The bigger the number is, if the number on this side, the number itself, not counting the negative sign, if the number itself is smaller than this number, well, then you get a negative average rate of change. So that means that if this is a coefficient, like you could say this negative 1 is the variable to the 0th power. So these two cancel out, and then you're left with negative 1. But you could say negative 1 is x to the 0, and this would be a coefficient. So the lower the coefficient, if the coefficient at this end is lower than the coefficient at this end, that means that it's going to have a negative average rate of change, which is true just for this equation. So we can go and do that, but let's just look at where both the numbers are positive, and let's not use that pattern. So 8. 14 plus 8 is 22, plus 3 is 25, minus x to the third. So that's minus 8 to the third power. That's 8 times 8 times 8. And just 6 times 6 times 6 is a lot. And now you're getting 8 times 8 times 8. And now even I can't do this in my head, so I'm going to do it in a calculator and come back right now. Just looked at a calculator, and just now I saw that the answer was 512, and that's a lot. So minus 512, and that's already going to be, you already know it's going to be a very, very small number. So reviewing, 14 plus 8 is 22, plus 3 is 25, minus 512 is, the answer is 487, negative 487. Negative 487, and now I think you know what's going to happen next if you've been following along. I think, well, this is my hypothesis, and I think that when we input 6 as x into this equation, we are going to get a number that is slightly bigger than negative 487. In fact, I think we might even get negative 227. We could. I mean, actually, that's probably not going to happen. But we will get a negative number, and this is going to be a positive average rate of change. That is my hypothesis, and that's what I think is going to happen. But let's just test it out. So we have 6, and we're going to substitute it into x. So 14 plus 6 is 20, plus 3 is 23, minus x to the third, which is 216, minus 216 is, the answer is 393. So negative 393 is our answer. I mean, not negative 393. What am I saying? Negative 193. That's our answer. And as you can see, these two are very small numbers, but it's still a positive average rate of change, and so we can rule this one out. And 2, 1, as you can see, this is probably going to end up in a negative average rate of change, but let's just look. So 14 plus 2 is 16, plus 3 is 19, minus 2 times 2 times 2, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, so 19 minus 8 is 11, and negative 1 plus 14 is 13, plus 3 is 16, minus negative 1, which is plus 1, is 17. And now we have a positive average rate of change, which I actually was not expecting. So now we have a positive average rate of change, because at 2 it was 11, and at negative 1 it was 17, as it was right here. And now we know the value for, and the last one, now we know the value for negative 1, which is 17 and 1. So 14 plus 1 is 15, and plus 3 is 18, minus x to the third power. So that's 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. So 18 minus 1 is 17. So we have an average rate of change of 0. This hasn't changed at all. And that's 0. And it does say where the average rate of change of p is negative or 0. So we should color it in the circle. And we are done. As always, I hope this video was helpful, and please subscribe, share, comment, and like this video. And to see more from this math series, you can just stay tuned. And I also am going to be starting a chemistry series tomorrow, so watch out for that. And there's another series for young kids. If you think this math is too hard, you can move on to that series instead of this. So I'll see you in the next one, and maybe in my other series, but for the most part, see ya.